This is Mayor Tom O'Leary back. I missed last week, and I'm sorry about that, but had some other things to attend to that I think we're good for the city. So I'm back with a lot of things to talk about tonight. One of the things that may be rolling on the screen now is the latest rendering. This is sort of sharing the project as it evolves. Latest rendering of the major park facility that we'll be installing in the first half of the spring-summer of 2019. So I think we've got the color right. This is about as close as we could find to the old Galion gold graders, and so for the historical grader purists, this is as close as we could come, and I'm really pretty happy about it. What you see are a couple different viewpoints on the two major features of the park. The road grader, a look-alike road grader, and then the roller. The roller largely produced in Bucyrus, the grader produced over here. I want to remind folks that there's a number of other recreational items, swings, some climbing toys for the 12, 13-year-olds. So this park, if we are able to deliver, and we're kind of nervous about it, but it's going to happen this year, is really for what I would say the 8 to 12 or 8 to 13-year-old. Whereas over at East Park at the Splash Grounds or Spray Park, whatever word you use, or maybe you don't use either one, but out there that's clearly designed for kids from toddlers on up to 8 years old. So we really very much realize that we need something that's a little bit more challenging, a little bit for what would be intermediate school age kids, and so here's the latest renderings, and certainly encourage people to come up and take a look at them and give us feedback on that item. So, or on this idea. I want to mention a couple of other things, a couple of numbers that came up over the last few days, and one of them involves the traffic light at Brant Road and 30, or Brant Road and 598 rather, just south of 30. We'd talked over the past several weeks, in fact questions, very many shows about this, and I had hoped to be able to have the light up and in operation by Labor Day. It looks like, of all things, what will delay that project is actually the steel poles and arms that the traffic lights will be attached to. So we had a meeting on that to chart the engineering and construction time frame, and it turns out that item is probably going to be the slowest wheel in getting that project done. So we'll start tomorrow to think of some other ways perhaps to procure that hardware, shorter time frame than to wait until the project is bid later this spring. So that project's moving forward, but maybe that September Labor Day time frame for operation may be a little aggressive, but now we have a challenge to try and hit that target. That's an important number. Another number that you'll begin to hear about will be the number 36, and that would be the number of proposed units in an apartment complex that is moving through its approval process to change the zoning, and the location is just east of the school complex and north and west of east of Chicago in the Drug Mart Plaza. The owners of that property have come forward and asked for rezoning, and they have a plan to build a really pretty nice apartment complex in the neighborhood of $4.5 million for these 36 units. So those are two important numbers, ones that are exciting in one regard, the idea of 36 nice apartments being built in an area close to the school where we see other residential development possible. The other one is not quite as good a number. It's going to be a few weeks longer to get our streetlight project up than we'd anticipated. So Anyway, couple of other items. Continue to work very consistently, very aggressively, not quite sure what the best word is, on developing the detailed plans and the necessary financial and political support for constructing what we call the Freeze Athletic Center out north of Brant Road. So that project, again, you can track it as a citizen, as either as someone wants to know more about it or somebody who is an advocate of the project. You can begin to track that by watching City Council and the committee's agenda as different legislative items are need to go through council in order to request the funds and move forward in a yay or nay vote on building that kind of sports complex. So, I mean, those are the kinds of things that I've got tonight. I don't know if we have any questions.
A couple left over from last time. First off, Tanya and Eric had a comment about the snow shoveling.
Yeah.
A little bit of misinformation about kids being required to have a permit to shovel snow.
Right.
If you recall, there was a little bit of miscommunication about it not being kids, about it actually being a group of adults. I don't know if you want to clarify a little bit.
We aren't going to cite anyone, but if you've got people, adults who are bordering on menacing neighbors and being pretty persistent about that, then a police report was a call from a neighbor who felt that kind of, if you will, intimidation, and so we'll go out and respond to that. The notion that you'd have to actually get a shoveling permit, that's probably do we have better things to do than that? Absolutely. Would the police officers say, yeah, that they've got plenty of things to do? I think the answer to that question is yes. So no one was cited, and it was really, in the police reports, basically shoe-flying some adults that were persisting with some elderly people.
Okay, thanks, Mayor. Another leftover question came from Amanda. She was asking if it's possible for curbs to be added to the side streets where people park.
Oh, golly. How to answer that as directly as possible. The short answer is unlikely. Some of the major side streets, or arterials would probably be a better word, like Boston, and some of those other roads, when the city resurfaced them, they did reconstruct the curbs. In our relatively small annual resurfacing program, unless we're installing a storm sewer in the area, which will happen as we move out 1st Avenue, 2nd, 3rd, out to 6th Avenue, it's unlikely that we would do anything other than resurface. And the runoff and the getting rid of those stormwater is really reliant on small, admittedly undersized and old storm tiles. So unless we're reconstructing the storm sewer in that neighborhood, it's unlikely we would put curbs back in when we resurfaced it. I'll go on for one more second. Bucyrus, by contrast, you follow it, has had a income tax set aside there for many years. And generally speaking, when they resurface roads in Bucyrus, they do rebuild the curbs, get that curb in what's known as positive drainage so the water would run to the storm basin. So kind of a medium-length answer. What you'll see this year, if there isn't a curb and there's not a big storm sewer project, will likely, when we resurface, to simply resurface it.
Okay, thanks, Mayor. Before we go on to the next question, just want to put out there for everybody watching, we are having some internet issues tonight. The entire video is being recorded as usual. Everything will be posted, and any questions we are not able to see tonight because of the internet issues, we will get to during next week's shoot. Another leftover question. This one comes from Tina. She asks if there are any plans for the uptown sidewalks, getting those repaired and into better shape?
No immediate plans, and particularly with regard to enforcing the existing property owners we aren't strictly enforcing the ordinance. Now, that's not going to make a whole lot of people happy on either side of the issue. But the way the ordinance stands now, that's pretty clearly the property owner's job to maintain the sidewalk. What we have suggested at City Hall, or to put it, sort of narrow the field so if people don't like it, it's me, what I've suggested a couple times over the past 5 years, is for the uptown property owners to form what's known as a special improvement district, which, without getting into excruciating detail, would allow them to tax themselves and then use those dollars to make improvements in that area. Higher level of maintenance, perhaps contracted snow shoveling, systematic sidewalk replacement, cleaning up of dog turds on a regular basis. Those kinds of things could be done with a special improvement district. For the city's part, we wouldn't have to pay that assessment, but what we agreed to do is where the city owns property in that area, let's say Park Square, Kobe Park, the Light and Water Office and Health Department. We would pay what would be our assessment if we were to be given an assessment. And we also said that we would upfront that, because with the property assessment, everybody agreed to put it on, council would agree to assess those property owners, and then you'd wait a year to collect the money, because it would go on the taxes and they'd receive the money the next year. If the city went ahead and front-loaded or went ahead and paid the assessment up front, then some of those services, part of the systematic replacement of sidewalks, could be budgeted for and taken care of. So is the city going to use the general revenue of the city to improve uptown sidewalks? Unlikely. No more than I'm going to go out on South Market where there's bad sidewalks and replace that. So the notion that the uptown sidewalks are in a little bit different category and therefore need public support, it's probably one that you and I would have a disagreement with and a good debate about. But I really think the solution is the passage of a special improvement district, and quite honestly, the city has tried to get that ball rolling a couple of times, and it only takes the majority of the property owners. It doesn't take unanimous property owners. So 2 or 3 or 4 property owners who own a lot of property could pass the petition and then ask City Council to impose that special improvement tax on their properties. So it's a neat topic. I tried twice. I'll do it again, and we'll be good on our commitment. But up till now, there's not been a real active interest in carrying that forward on the part of the current property owners. What do we got? What else, Matt?
Well, no questions came in before the live feed went down. So again, we're going to have to address anything that does come in. We're going to have to address that next week.
Yeah, I'd have to say that some of my answers were kind of not real good. So maybe the idea is we'll just scratch this instead of having it up there on tape. But I only jest. I do apologize for having a little bit of a glitch. We're going to continue to utilize this type of social media. We're also, and I mentioned this a couple other times, we're open to ideas about expanding it. I know there are a couple of posting boards or service that have quite a number of people who share information on Galion topics. I'm open to having them come in and ask questions. I think there's a lot more accuracy in what you see posted, but I think sharing that, and if as a result of that it lends credibility to some of these websites. I don't even know what they're called. Help me. What are they called?
Talk about Galion.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And
Galion Neighborhood Watch, Galion Remember When. Yep.
yeah, I don't know I don't even know what they're called, but whatever they are, that kind of audience that takes this information and gets that to a lot of people's personal devices or their home computers is really what we're reaching out. You may have noticed, and I'll wind down here in a second. You may have noticed that we've used Twitter a few times, and so we're experimenting with that. I'm not sure we'll utilize it, but if we were able to get information out using Twitter, we certainly wouldn't be opposed to that. I don't think the Twitter fights are much fun, and that probably doesn't lend us as sharp-tongued as I can be. I probably ought to stay off the Twitter so as not to inadvertently offend some of my friends and constituents. So with that tongue-in-cheek, I'll just say good night and stay tuned. I think it's next week we're back on. We got council. We'll try to stay on that schedule. Oh, I got some help from my favorite audience member. I was told to mention the ice skating rink, and that is, it's how something that it comes up in a bit of an impromptu way, suggested by one of my neighbors to start with and a police officer, and then researched, and for another number, about $4,300, we were able to get that set up, and we'll see how it works. I'm not an ice skater, but that has very little to do with whether it's a good investment. And I think if we next year we'll start a little bit sooner, and we'll get a whole winter's use out of it, and then we'll do an evaluation then. But kind of exciting. That's older Galionites remember having that kind of recreational facility, and over time, I think some of the commentary that I saw, people were asking, who has ice skates? Nobody has ice skates. Well, maybe they don't, but they're for sale. And this is America, and they probably aren't a whole lot. So if you're serious about it, you can probably pick them up used for $10 and slip and break your elbow or something, sue the city. So, hey, appreciate you listening as always. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you next week.